Evening, everyone. I call the hybrid in-person virtual meeting of the Wauwatosa School Board to order. It is 7 p.m. on Monday, February 8th, 2021. I'm in conference room C of the Fisher Building, 12121 West North Avenue, with board members participating in person and remotely via the video conferencing platform Zoom, due to active health and safety concerns associated with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic public health emergency. We will begin with a moment of silent reflection. Ms. Newman, please call the roll.
Mr. Doman?
Here.
Ms. Fraley? Here. Mr. Meyer?
Here.
Ms. Mufeld?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Allen?
Here.
Dr. Jessup Banger?
Here.
Ellie Katie?
Here.
It's good to see you all. Members of the Wauwatosa School Board value the input of students, parents, staff members, and community members. The board's regularly scheduled meetings provide an opportunity for opinions and concerns to be expressed publicly. The board values all comments and will respectfully consider this input in decision-making. The board requests that individuals limit their comment on each item to 3 minutes. Following any comment, an individual board member may respond on the issue raised. However, it is not the intent of public comment portion of the agenda for the board to enter into a debate with members or a member or members of the community. Because non-agenda items are not publicly posted in advance, no action will be taken on public comment tonight regarding non-agenda items. Is there any public comment tonight on any non-agenda items?
Yeah, Carolyn Neikirk, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Neikirk at 2576 North 84th Street. And I was wondering if it was possible to have the Medical Advisory Board meet again, now that there have been several articles in the paper and articles in the Wall Street Journal for kids to be back in school. The numbers are going down. Maybe try to get them in a little bit earlier than April 5th, hopefully late February, March. Also, many of the schools surrounding us are in. And I was just wanting to ask if maybe that could be put on the agenda for one of the upcoming meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. If we do kind of bring the Medical Public Health Advisory Panel back, we will be sure to communicate that very broadly across the community when that occurs.
We have a couple of others. Lane Johnson, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Yeah, Lane Johnson, 8333 Kenyon Avenue. And I'm echo this previous speaker's comments. I'm not so concerned about the medical board reconvening, but I'd like to see the school board every meeting review the decision of April 5th and try to move this forward and up so our kids can get back to school sooner. And I'd also like to see the board capture any issues that are preventing them from making that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Next is Kirsten. Please state your first and last name and address. You have the microphone.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Good evening. My name is Kirsten. I live at 2520 North 93rd Street. And I want to thank you for your time and all the service to the school district and the school board. I understand that reopening is not an agenda item today. And I really ask myself why. Today's Milwaukee Journal Sentinel Facebook posted headline read, Wisconsin moves to top of nation in daily COVID-19 vaccinations. The daily infection rates are sinking, the vaccination rates are going up, and the decision to reopen should not have been shelved 9 weeks. In light of the disadvantage you are placing all students and their families who want to come back to school in person full time in, you should be addressing the reopen topic at every meeting. After all, students who are not comfortable returning to the classroom can choose to virtually attend, for example, via TOSA Connect. Families whose students simply do not thrive or reach their full potential in virtual forms of instruction, what choice do they have? We realize we have no options in the Wauwatosa School District. I mean, I admit my frustration level is very high after almost a year of mostly virtual instruction. And again, all the numbers are pointing in the right direction, but we're going to sit around at home for another 2 months. In the meantime, literally down the block, in-person learning has been taking place 5 days a week. Adjacent school districts are open. Elmbrook, Hamilton, just to name two. I understand Brown Deer is transitioning to 4 days in person. What do they know that we don't? Why can't our school district figure this out? Since I work from home and sit about 10 feet away from my son's Chromebook, and he is a freshman at Wauwatosa West, I get the full spectrum of the Zoom classes for concurrent learning. It's painful, and I don't even have to do homework afterwards on the laptop. I mean, so much for it's not about being on Zoom all day. This is no replacement for real school, which is why it's important to react flexibly to developments and not bureaucratically adhere to far out dates. After all, if the numbers start pointing consistently in the wrong direction, you're not going to keep schools open another 9 weeks because you decided so 5 days ago. So please reconsider this issue, reopen our schools as soon as possible, and give our students a fair chance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are no more hands raised.
Thank you, Jamie. We will move into the consent agenda. Oh, we have someone here, Jamie.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the school board, Dr. Erdl. I thank you once again for the opportunity to speak to you. I am extraordinarily frustrated. What happened, the procedural aspects of the last meeting and the decision behind the last meeting was abominable. This board has shown once again its inability or unwillingness to perform the job that it is assigned to the education of our students. It was quite clear coming into this meeting by the number of comments at the beginning of the board discussion, the number of school board members that came into that meeting with their minds already made up that they were not going to approve our students going back to school. And I have asked that this item be placed back on for this meeting and was flatly denied. For what reason? Because it's inconvenient to have this discussion, apparently. The director of the CDC has come out and said it is safe for students to be back in class and teachers to be back in the classroom even before our teachers get vaccinated. Why we are not looking at this, I do not know. Dr. Ricker, one of our medical board members, is actually holding public seminars stating that schools should be reopened. He is the individual that Dr. Erdl and the district brought forth to be the medical advisor to reopening schools until this board hijacked that and decided that it was not sufficient, that we needed a medical advisory panel to make those decisions, which we came out with metrics and we've been handcuffed to since that time. This is ridiculous. There is no legitimate, safe reason why we cannot be back in class right now. I call on the school board right now to call a special meeting later this week to discuss this issue. The number of COVID cases are at a low for multiple months now, 500 some, something we have not seen in many, many months. As stated, the vaccines are going up. However, vaccines are not a reason to wait to reopen our schools. We need education for our students. Dr. Erdl clearly outlined the fact that our students have an severely increased level of failure rate because of the model that we are currently in.
Jill, 30 seconds.
This board needs to take action. It needs to act now in a decisive and appropriate way. We cannot cater to the school board, the teachers' unions, and what they want and when they believe to be safe. We are fighting for the education of our students. You guys need to do your job, which you have failed to do so far, and get our students back in class, and need to do it soon, not April, no later than the end of February is when our students should be back in class, because there is no legitimate reason why they cannot or should not be back in class.
Joe, you have time. Thank you.
We have one more hand raised in Zoom. Rory Larson, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Hi, actually, my name is Danielle Long. I'm at 2622 North Menominee River Parkway, and I'm not going to speak to what others have already spoken to, but I really appreciated getting the rates of failure that Dr. Ertl presented at the January board meeting. I thought those were really very telling and very disturbing. And I know that those were preliminary rates because final semester grades were not in. So I'm just asking if those statistics can continue to be updated for us and provided to parents, because I think that's something we should really continue to be given at board meetings. So I just request that those be a continued statistic that are shared, because I think that is something that should not be ignored. Thank you.
There are no more hands raised.
Thank you. We are going to move into the consent agenda. Are there any items in the consent agenda which board members would like to remove for separate discussion and action? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Fraley. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Roland. Any board comment on the consent agenda?
Dr. Jessica Banger, can I just put out a big thank you to all of the teachers that are retiring, and also Bill Anderson, one administrator that's retiring. Anytime these lists come out each year when we have retirements, those are always really tough because for the most part, they're long tenured Wauwatosa teachers. And, you know, I hope it doesn't become a thing of the past, but it's honorable to have somebody that has stayed with us for that long and provided so much for so many kids and so many families. So just a big thank you and congratulations to all of them.
Yep. Dr. Ertl took the words out of my mouth. I saw certain names on this list that have taught my kids, and I'm both thrilled for you and very, very sad to see you go. I am grateful to so many people who were a part of our family, and some of these folks who I didn't have them as a teacher, but got to visit their classrooms and see all the great stuff that they were doing. So congratulations to all of you.
I know we have Mr. Anderson I know he wanted to say a couple of words. He's on here. So Janie, can you put him on as a panelist or give him the opportunity to speak?
Sure. Bill, actually, I'll promote you to panelist. That way we can see your smiling face as well. He should be joining. Here he is.
Thank you, board. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, community. I just want to say a heartfelt thank you for providing me the opportunity for 19 years of service with the Wauwatosa School District. And Phil, thank you so much. From East High School to the Fisher Building to the Montessori School and now county programs. I truly have hopefully left a legacy of continued success for our kids in our community. And I couldn't have done it without the support of the board and of Dr. Ertl. So a heartfelt thank you. I don't know where my future lies, but I'm sure I'll be working and helping kids somewhere in the United States where hopefully I can retire and be warm. So thank you.
May I say something, Dr. Jessica Banger?
Of course.
It's the little memories, but they're the example of how Mr. Anderson operated and took care of people. It was commencement day at East High School in the gym, and it was an extraordinarily hot day. And I was one of the board members up on the stage, and there were these big fans, and they were pointed towards the stage because, we're standing the whole time and it was very hot. And somehow the fan got pushed away from the stage, and Mr. Anderson came up and pointed it back at the stage. And Bill, I am grateful to this day that you did that. So, but I think that's an example of how Mr. Anderson operated over the years. He cared about everybody and always watched what was going on and took care of those details. So thank you, Mr. Anderson. You will be missed.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there any community comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, Ms. Newman, please call the roll.
Mr. Doman,
Yes.
Ms. Fraley,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Mufeld,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rowland,
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Banger.
Yes. Congratulations to all those of you and all that you've done for our district. Much to be learned from your experiences, and we'll miss you. Next up is our teaching and learning action item, AVID contract and AVID implementation timeline. Sharon, can you read this one for us?
Yes, thank you. It is recommended the school board approve the AVID contract and AVID implementation timeline as presented, and I so move.
Second.
Second.
Third, fourth.
So many eager second and thirders and fourthers.
Jamie, you disabled us, screen sharing.
Sorry, my bad. You're good now.
Hello, good evening, everybody. I am here just to give a quick little overview of AVID and where we've been with it, what our plan is moving forward with it in preparation to review and vote on the contract that's proposed to you today. So AVID again means that it's an acronym for Advancement via Individual Determination. And it is a framework that's designed to help students develop their skills that they need to be successful in college, career, and in our global society. It's a national organization that is actually is in 7,500 different schools throughout our nation and internationally. And AVID sets out to close the opportunity gap by preparing all students for college readiness and success in a global society. So as we look at how AVID fits into everything here already in Wauwatosa, as a district, why we do what we do every day is in an effort to ensure that our students leave us on graduation day confident with the necessary competencies to be successful in college, career, and the global society. What we do to bring these competencies to life is by providing students with opportunity, promote a sense of belonging, and promote high levels of academic achievement. To date, we have our district-created instructional framework and our equity plan that guide our decision-making around instruction. However, to better define how we work to operationalize and bring this work to life, the instructional elements of our instructional framework will really be elevated through AVID. And AVID emphasizes specific research-based, student-centered instructional strategies that foster opportunities to make student thinking visible through writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading-based strategies. AVID will afford us as a district to have a common language, definition, understanding, and approach to rigorous instruction. Our elementary and secondary school-wide approach will foster the implementation of these identified WICR strategies, as we call them, through the planning and execution of daily instruction. The AVID secondary elective class will reinforce everything that all students will have access to, and will reinforce those school-wide strategies for students that are selected to be in the AVID elective class. And that will incorporate collaborative study sessions, goal setting, focused instruction on these instructional strategies, and college visits, just to name a few, once we can venture off campus again. I want to also further connect how this shows up currently in our equity plan when we were planning for this. Our equity plan, as you're familiar, has 3 different themes: opportunity, sense of belonging, and achievement. In particular, I want to draw your attention to the theme of achievement. Our action step is to plan and deliver a rigorous K-12 education. So via our instructional framework, AVID's WICR strategies will provide us with the necessary coherence through a common language and understanding of high leverage instructional strategies to bring the instructional component of that framework really to life. Furthermore, AVID offers a continuous improvement tool called the Coaching and Certification Instrument, better known as the CCI. And that will assist each school and us as a holistic district as a system to identify the strengths and areas for continued growth that align with all of our priorities as a district. The data from the CCI, our classroom assessments, as well as state and national standardized testing will continue to inform our ongoing work as a district. So just kind of outlining the timeline, in the 1920 school year, our high schools adopted AVID school-wide along with the 9th grade elective class. This year, our high schools, again, still continuing to work through the school-wide implementation. The pandemic has thrown some wrenches into that, but we'll continue to move that forward, and we're planning for that currently. Our AVID elective class was moved up into 10th grade, and then we are currently in a planning stage for both of our middle schools for implementation next year, as well as Washington and Eisenhower elementary schools. Year 3, so next year, we will continue with our development of the school-wide at the high schools, increase our AVID elective class up to 11th grade, and then we will be implementing the school-wide approach at our middle schools, Washington and Eisenhower, and implementing the AVID elective at 7th grade, and we'll start a planning year for 3 of our different elementary schools. Similar situation, then moving on into 22-23, and we will be expanding our AVID elective class up through 12th grade, and then 7th and 8th grade at the middle schools. And that will be the last planning year that we will start to fold in the rest of our traditional elementary schools. In year 5, we will have working towards sustainment of the AVID program in our high schools and in our middle schools. And then that will be in a couple of different progressions for the other elementary schools. And then by 24-25, we aim to have a school-wide implementation in all of our secondary schools, and then continued expansion of that school-wide approach in all of our elementary schools. And we obviously will be continuing to engage in continuous improvement to identify through that CCI that I mentioned where our strengths, where do we need to grow, and then setting forth a plan to address those concerns. So in terms of the approval of the contract, we have selected to propose a 3-year contract with AVID rather than doing a year-to-year contract. And so as you look at these numbers and the total, I just want to touch on a couple of the items that this all includes. AVID does a lot of professional learning with our site teams, our administrators, that then also bring that back to our teachers. There are a number of different program supports, consultations, coaching that we do with our AVID supports. our Avid support personnel. This also provides us with a plethora of resources related to curriculum and instruction. And by doing a 3-year contract, we are looking at a $72,000 savings. And that also allows for some complementary, tailored, ongoing professional learning. We'll be able to tell the Avid national program that these are our areas of growth. How can you help us really hone in on this by providing some really strong professional learning for us? And that will help us continue to move that school-wide, really get that ingrained in our system. So that is what I have for you this evening.
Thank you. Board questions? Shirley.
Hi, Nicole. I'm a big fan of Avid. You know that, I think. One of the things that I'd like to get information from you all on is looking at that total. How many teachers is that touching, that 170,000? And then how many students do we expect that's going to impact, just so we can sort of have an understanding of like the per person professional development costs that we're talking about?
Yep.
Or you could hand it to me.
Yep, it's all listed right in there. Yes.
Okay. Yep. And then my other question, and if it's in here, I apologize.
That's okay.
Where does this fit within the broader professional development budget?
I would have to turn it over to Mrs. Bowers to answer that question. But
Again,
in terms,
I don't expect you to have that at the tip of your fingertips.
That's okay. We actually have separate for the professional development component of Avid, sending people to Summer Institute or Digital XP, which they did last summer. We have that currently built into the teaching and learning budget. And so the plan is that we take schools through 2 years of support from the district level, and then they build that into their school-based budget to continue to build capacity at the school level. So they are sending individual teams to kind of help get things started. We help them add a few more people to that team next year. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And then they'll continue to grow that capacity at the building level.
And then does that also, is there anybody that then comes in from Avid to look at like what the trainers have done to like ensure quality and, you know, everything staying at the same consistent level of implementation?
Mm-hmm. Yep, so that's part of my job.
Okay.
I am what's called the district director, and I am going through a lot of training,
I'm sure.
to be able to do just that. So then I will oversee all of our sites here to go through that CCI, that college and career indicator tool. And then all of that data gets collected, and we have to actually send artifacts over to Avid, and then they give an assessment on us as well. So, and I work very closely with the program director from Avid on all of that.
And they do typically, outside of a pandemic year, send people to do school-based visits and district-based visits to see Avid in action in the schools. So we'll see how that looks going forward. But typically that is.
So if we missed it this year, they could still possibly come next year, et cetera.
For sure.
Yes.
And I apologize if I missed this in all the other documents that you all sent too. But in terms of how this fits in with the broader budget, like I appreciate that you're saying this is already captured. I'm assuming it's captured for like this year. Do we have like multi-year, long-term other PD that we're anticipating in terms of math or in terms of social studies that we should be accounting for?
So right now, and I'll be working through the budget process with Mrs. Kwiatkowski, but right now we have a separate professional learning budget in teaching and learning that we use for those purposes that is different from this particular pot of money.
In terms of where we can draw it down from.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Sorry I missed this.
No problem. No problem.
Other questions from the board?
I have a couple of questions. Big supporter of this program as well, so thank you for bringing this forward to us. Could you give me a sense of how many students we enroll kind of per year? And my understanding is now that we're in the middle school, they need to get in 7th grade, and if they don't, then are they going to be able to have other chances to enroll later in their career? And if so, are there ways to expand the program if we kind of get an overwhelming interest, which I hope happens, but that obviously could create other issues as far as making sure that we have enough opportunities for students?
Absolutely. So there's the school-wide AVID, and then there's the AVID elective. So we like to call it Big AVID and Little AVID. So Big AVID will be all-encompassing. All students will have access to the AVID program, for lack of a better word. So all of our teachers will get trained and will have continuous ongoing professional learning on those Wicker strategies that I mentioned, so that anytime you walk into a classroom, you should be able to see elements of really strong reading engagement, different writing strategies at play, students taking notes in a cohesive way across different disciplines. So that's how all students will have access to it. And then through our AVID elective, our students go through an application and interview process. And really what the AVID elective targets are our students identified in the academic middle. So students that are traditionally B and C students, and that we want to help move them up and support them in taking rigorous classes, so maybe multiple AP classes, and provide them with that support. And we have about 25 students each year in our AVID elective program. So this year we have roughly 25 students in our 9th grade, 25 students in our 10th grade. But I believe we have a couple, I think we have 2 sections actually of our 9th grade, if I remember correctly, specifically at East High School. So we want to continue to grow the program if we have interest. We want to be able to respond to that interest. But that's kind of where we're at right now. And we are aiming for 25 7th graders at Longfellow and 25 at Whitman to get us started next year.
So do you think are you anticipating more interest than the 25? Or, not to put you on the spot, I'm just wondering, are we going to be limited to growing the program? What limits us? Is it interest in students? Is there additional funding that's needed? Is it teacher training? I'm specifically talking about the AVID program that they take as a specific class.
I don't know that I have the answer to that question.
I think when it comes to the staffing, it's just if they're choosing to take that course, there's going to be one other course, one less. So there probably isn't going to be additional cost. Just if we do have to train additional people, would probably be the only cost. But I think I wouldn't look at that as a cost, as more of an investment. But I would anticipate the one person, if we have additional sections and we have more students, we can create more sections without additional cost.
So I guess, if we saw an overwhelming interest in our Longfellow and Whitman 7th graders, more than 25, we'd consider in the future. We'd have room to expand or something like that if we feel, hey, this is really working, hitting the mark. Maybe we're closing some of our achievement gaps, things like that. We could see expanding the program. And I hope we have great success. And I hope this is a problem we have in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Dolman. Absolutely. We will continue to monitor that. But really the power of AVID will come through the school-wide approach, because that is the structure and the system that will support all students in the school. So that's something that we're very excited about as a system, and believe that will have some great impact on all of our measures and all of our students. But 100%, if we've got more kids than we have current space for, we will look to expand the AVID elective in our schools.
Great. Thanks. I really appreciate all the work you guys are putting into it. I'm really looking forward to seeing some great results.
Thank you.
Yeah, so are we.
Hi, I was just wondering, how do you promote AVID? Because I know I actually was just helping my little sister register for classes because she's going to be a freshman next year. And I saw that elective on the registration. And I think this is a great class for especially high school students to be involved with if it helps with college readiness. And I was just wondering, how do you do a presentation for middle school students, or are there other ways that you could promote it so that you get more enrollment from students?
So our student services staff does do some different presentations with students. Last year, we also had our Avid elective teachers go into the middle schools to share about the program with the students. We also do teacher recommendations. So based on a lot of the selection criteria that we are looking for. So students in the academic middle, students who are traditionally underrepresented at the university level, we do ask for teacher recommendations on who else they see would be of benefit from the program. So, we're always looking for new ways to recruit and promote the program. So always looking for additional ideas if you have any.
Thank you.
So sorry, could I just ask one follow-up question? So that last question was fantastic. So is part of the AVID training for our teachers helping them, I understand it's understanding how to do the AVID program, but also helping them identify students that maybe didn't self-identify or asked to be part of the program? Because I think that's a really good point of, there might be students who don't have that push at home or whatever the case may be, but might be great fits for this program. So how do we help teachers kind of identify it?
Yep, absolutely. That is definitely part of the professional learning that we engage staff in, is helping to identify who might be of added benefit of the elective.
Great, thank you.
So I have a question, if I may. Obviously, this program has a lot of support, and when in our timeline running up to the first day this goes into effect, will we know whether there was like phenomenal interest far and beyond what our capacity is? Is there a place in the timeline where you would say, well, we need to go back to the board to ask for more resources, rather than turn down a whole bunch of people? I'm presuming success here, right? I'm trying to be positive, and I'm trying to ask a question that will enable us to be agile in responding to demand.
Absolutely. So, for example, if our middle school and our high school students are currently in the process of course selection, and if our principals come back to us and say, we have 75 students that at one particular school that are interested for, let's just say 11th grade AVID elective, how do we make that happen? That's a conversation then that I would, talk with Dr. Ertl and Mrs. Bowers, and we would see how do we meet that demand. However, it is the intent is for students to start as early as possible. So starting with 7th grade or starting with 9th grade, and then sticking with the program for the duration of their secondary tenure. So if we do see that we have, maybe that was a bad example with 11th grade, but let's say that we have 75 7th graders show interest, then that would be definitely a conversation that we would want to have.
Will you bring that back to the board then for discussion, please?
I don't think it's going to take any more resources. It's just our typical staffing process.
Oh, okay.
So
so you have ability to scale
Right.
up by orders of magnitude to meet demand then.
If we have 75
Is
kids,
that right?
Right. If we have 75
Okay.
students, we'll have 3 sections.
Okay, good. Good. That's what I wanted to hear, because I wouldn't want to find out, well, we had 75 and but we only had space for 25, so we're going to have that extra 50 wait another year. No. If this is so good, then we want to figure out how to do it right away for people. Okay, thanks. That's a good answer. Thank you.
Awesome. Any final board questions or comment? Thank you all for a great set of questions and comments. Any community comment or questions in this item?
There are no hands raised.
Ms. Newman, please call the roll.
Mr. Doman?
Yes.
Ms. Fraley?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Mufeld?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rowland,
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Anger.
Yes, and that passes. Thank you for the great presentation as well. It was great to hear more about the program. We are next moving into a teaching and learning report, discussion of policy proposals and policy revisions. Joined by Director of Special Education, Therese Kwiatkowski, and Director of Student Services, Mike Perlski. This one right here, right? Okay, so you want to share the screen?
While she's getting settled in there, I will just open this up for you. Tonight, we are here with a first read of 4 policies. 3 of those are standing policies that we already have here in the district. And tonight, we're going to recommend some updates to policy language that align to state statute. And then the 4th policy we'll be discussing tonight is actually a new policy we're proposing for the district to support Section 504. And Mrs. Kwiatkowski is going to do a little background with you on why we believe this is a policy that will be beneficial for families and students in our district.
Thank you, Mrs. Bowers. So as Mrs. Bowers said, I'm recommending a new policy to you tonight. So I thought I'd share just a little bit of background information. I know you received copies of the policy earlier. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act is part of our is governed through the Office of Civil Rights. So what's different, I did a little comparison and contrast. So both of these both IDEA and Section 504 target individuals with disabilities. However, if you look at IDEA, that's governed through the U.S. Department of Education and our Department of Public Instruction, whereas Section 504 is really only governed by the Office of Civil Rights. DPI actually has no oversight. If you go on their website, they will direct you to the Office of Civil Rights. IDEA is a special education law that provides special education services, specially designed instructions, and related services, whereas Section 504 is really just provides reasonable accommodations, and it's an accommodation and service plan for students to access that general education environment. And finally, if you look at the definition of disability, it's very different under each of these legislations. If you look at IDEA, we're really targeting those 13 areas of disability, such as specific learning disability, autism, intellectual disability, whereas Section 504 is a much broader definition of disability. They describe a mental or physical impairment that substantially limits major life activities. I wanted to talk a little bit about what Section 504 looks like in Wauwatosa and share a few points. Even though we're just recommending the policy this evening, we've always followed the federal regulations from the Office of Civil Rights under Section 504. So we've been following that policy and that legislation as long as I've been here, and I'm sure prior to my arrival. In Wauwatosa, we use the IDEA, that special education evaluation process, to determine if a student does have a disability. Those procedural requirements are much more comprehensive than the evaluation criteria described in Section 504, but it really allows us to ensure compliance as well as consistency. And I can share with you that many other districts use that same approach that we're using in Wauwatosa. Over the past years, we've provided ongoing training to our administrators and to student services staff on the regulations and practices. We continue to provide that professional development. And 3 years ago, we have an IEP management system. It's called OASIS. And we actually added the Section 504 management system to our special education package. And that allows for, again, more consistency and some more central office management and coordination of all that information. And really just why are we adding this policy? I get calls pretty regularly about Section 504. So we're really just trying to make information more accessible to staff and more accessible to families. And then finally, where do we get the information? Well, I have the opportunity to work with a lot of other districts in this area. So went to their websites. Some districts that I know have recently updated theirs or added theirs. So really went to their websites, looked at their policy. All of their policy is really pulling language right from the Rehabilitation Act. So use those as some examples and models to develop our policy as well as our administrative guidelines. And
And then in my presentation, I have some links for you to look at if you want to dig a little bit more deeper into that. So that is the update for section 504. My other policy revision is policy 5630.01. And that's our policy for seclusion and restraint of students with disabilities. And that revision is extremely minimal. In that policy, our old policy refers to Act 125, which is the state law around seclusion and restraint. And that law got updated in 2019 and went into place this past school year. So the only revision to that is crossing out Act 125 and replacing it with Act 118, which is the new updated guidelines from the Department of Public Instruction. So those are my two updates, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Porowski.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the potential revisions. The revisions I'm proposing tonight are around policy 5111, which is our eligibility of resident and non-resident students. Basically, it's a very simple adjustment. In the past, we had language in there about our high school students, our 9-12 students. The recommendation is to make sure that we add JK through 8. And that students that are resident students that are in home-based education could take up to 2 classes per trimester if space is available. The other part is that the state made a switch from course options in a different section when it was looking specifically at high school students, and recommends now that we would use the phrasing of early college credit program. So again, pretty minor technical changes. The proposal around policy 9270 is again around our home-based or private schooling. I know Ms. Newman shared the document. You'll see a lot more red in that. Most of what the recommendations are really are meant to be things that we can recommend but not require. So nothing we had in the policy in the past was wrong per se, but looking at the interpretation of how the state changed to the homeschooling kind of requirement to allow parents more ability to emphasize choice and how they would like to educate their children if they're involved in that programming. When they return to school, it doesn't give us as much opportunity to maybe judge or say make an assessment about what was done maybe is in our current language. So those are the recommendations around policy 9270.
Board questions and comments? Ms. Riley?
Mr. Porowski, the question I have is related to the K through 8 homeschool students. So if I'm understanding this correctly, let's talk like a 3rd grader could be homeschooled and the parents could say, but we would like our child to receive ELA and math instruction. No. Okay, yours. Sorry. It's your show.
They could request that. We would say no. What it really is looking at is more the languages would say, is there space availability? So in those two, that's really hard because we're also based around the board size for classes.
Yep.
So we'd probably be looking at the bulk of this for like an elementary school kid would be done in what we'd call like the electives.
Okay, so
they can request that. Yeah,
they can come do gym, they can come do music.
So when I was nodding yes, they can request anything.
Got it. Okay. Great.
The idea is we'd still go back to our class sizes, and then that's where we would say the space availability is probably most likely not going to be there.
Okay.
Again, it would be more likely that this would occur for our electives.
Okay. But it might be that it's not available in their home school, but it might be available in another school that has smaller class sizes.
We typically look at the home school, the neighborhood school. And that's where they would access, where we would determine if space was available or not.
Okay. That was my question on that one.
So may I ask a question just to clarify?
Yes, sir, Mr. Meyer.
With regard to the elementary schools, we declare how many open seats we have, and we've always been able to fill them well, always maybe too strong a word, but we're able to fill those seats. So with open enrollment students. So it's likely that in the mainstream classes, there wouldn't be any openings. Is that correct?
The only time there would probably be openings if we weren't able to fill a section with open enrollment. So we had a couple of resident students move out, or open enrollment decided not to take the seats. But generally speaking, we're at 18 for JK, SK, and 20 for the other elementary grades. So there would not be space.
Now, if just make sure everybody hears this is on the same page. A resident who registers for our school district as a full-time student, we always have space for those, right? So everybody knows that. We don't turn away any residents for regular full-time school. We have to find space for those students. It's only after we've gone through all of those sizing calculations where we declare how many open chairs we have, and then we try to fill them with open enrollment. And then after that, we come to this question about what we're talking about here in this policy. So that's right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, can I ask one more
question? Yes, that's right.
My other question is for you, Ms. Kwiatkowski. So in terms of the 504 policy, new policy, this is just what we've done in the past. We're just writing it down.
Correct. We're following the Rehabilitation Act. It's what we've always been doing. We're just making the policy part of the board policy, so it's more user-friendly and accessible to our staff and our families.
And so for parents of students who have an IEP or a 504, their processes for asking for an evaluation or giving a complaint or anything like that, it's the same for parents of kids who have 504 as have an IEP. So like, we're just making that clear for everybody.
Correct. It's all in the policy language. As far as our practices, nothing's changed.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks.
Any community comment on this item?
There are no hands raised.
This will come back in 2 weeks for a board, any more possible board discussion or questions, and a vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a final opportunity for public comment on non-agenda items. Is there any further public comment on non-agenda items?
Yes, we have a couple. Deb, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address. Deb, you are muted. Could you please unmute?
Thank you. This is Deb Falk-Palak at 7435 West Wells Street. This past week, last week, we had the special ed parent meeting with Ms. Kwiatkowski and Mr. Poralski were there. And I was very pleased to hear that Ms. Kwiatkowski was talking about convening a work group in spring to discuss new programming for our students with disabilities that would be leaving the high school. So it would be our 18 to 21-year-olds. I'd like to suggest possibly that time frame gets moved up a little bit, and it would be, in my opinion, really good, particularly about what I heard some comments with Avid tonight, but to possibly have a board member also attend the work group. One of the things we learned in the meeting last week is that we have a lot of students with disabilities the next couple of years or 1 or 2 years, and needing to come up with some kind of programming for them. So similar to what I heard the questions asked about Avid and coming back to the board about what's needed, I would just like to make sure that there's equitable conversations about what may be needed for having an influx of students with disabilities. I also am very hopeful that we will be strongly looking at integrated and inclusive environments and opportunities for these students based on the different things that we had heard about them. And I'd really like to also encourage looking at the U.S. Department of Labor's ODEP, which is the Office of Disability Employment Policy, Employment First initiatives, which really center around the premise that all people with disabilities, including those with significant disabilities, are capable of full participation in integrated employment and community life. So if the board has not really heard a lot about what do we do in our transition program, this may be a good time to learn more about it. And again, I'm very pleased to hear that there will be a work group put together to give some ideas and opinions. And also I would encourage that if there's a board member who can be part of that, to learn about it and to learn maybe what the needs are, similar to what you were asking with the AVID people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Adam. Adam, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Adam Davis, 2636 North 90th Street. Good evening. Just wanted to say, in listening to what I would call a disaster that was the previous school board meeting in regards to return to school 5 days a week, one issue that several students talked about and several of the board members brought up was concerns about the ability to social distance when all the kids who wanted to go back in person were back in person, especially in problem areas such as the lunchroom, during lunch hours, excuse me. This was despite several assurances from Dr. Ertl and all four of the four principals that were involved with the schools in question, the two middle and high schools, that this would be not a problem. They were assured us that this would not be a problem and could be worked out by the original February date. So I'm wondering, why didn't any of the board members ask for a detailed plan from those school administrators for these problem areas? This would have taken days, not weeks. A plan could have been presented to you and you could have voted on that at a later date. There is zero reason why you couldn't hold the vote that night, ask for a specific plan regarding the lunch or other areas of concern, such as passing in the hallways, and brought it back for a vote. Since this was a supposed concern, I'm also wondering if we even have any of those plans for the April date. And at this point, does it even matter? I just don't quite know where that all went, because that was the one big area of concern. And I'm wondering if anyone's talked about it for the April date, or was it just that, oh, okay, we'll do it in April now, so we won't worry about anything else. That's all I have.
Okay, we have one more. Ray C. Please state your name and address. You have the microphone.
Hello, my name is Ray Kronick, 4134 North 93rd Street. I would just like to express that I'm very saddened by last week's decision from the board, even though the medical profession. I thought we were supposed to be listening to science, but I guess we don't listen to science anymore. We just do what we would like. And as I know, people are coming up for vote on their seats. So all I can say is, everybody, we need to vote the board off and get new people on. Thank you.
There are no more hands raised.
Thank you all. It is 7:58. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I have a second? Steve?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Newman, please call the roll.
Mr. Doman?
Yes.
Ms. Fraley? Yep. Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Mufeld?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Dr. Jessica Panger?
Yep, and we are adjourned. Have a good night all.